Hi from Seattle. I'm Jennifer Bowker along with Brandon Huffman, National Recruiting Analyst for Scout.com. You know, we're just a couple of games into the season, but we're starting to see some recruiting trends. One of them, not so great to talk about, some uncertainty at USC. What's going on?
Well, I think that with the lot of success they've had early on, and really, you can make a case that they haven't been that unsuccessful. They're one loss to Washington State, pending what happened this weekend at Arizona State. But there's been calls for Lane Kiffin's job. At the Washington State game, there were a chance to fire Kiffin. Well, with that, I think recruits have kind of taken a second look there. There were some recruits that were at the USC-Washington State game that had some concerns about the booze and about the fire Kiffin chant, and just kind of wondering what's going on at USC. Since the beginning of the season, Tashawn Smallwood has decommitted. DJ Calhoun is one of their linebacker targets, is now going to take some official visits, and in fact he's planning to visit Arizona State, who they did play over the weekend. So it's just kind of interesting to see, that USC, who has long been a juggernaut recruiting-wise, a year ago at this time, 13 months ago, they had the makings of one of the greatest classes ever. It fell apart with the way the season fell apart, and then this year, the same uncertainty with Lane Kiffin's future is causing a lot of guys to take a step back and wondering if they really want to look at USC as long as he's the head coach. If they keep winning, though, if they start winning, they keep winning, that could change. And guys will realize that he's a little bit more solid. If they lose, then there's going to probably be a change. And now guys are going to have to look at USC to see who the future is going to be. But it's definitely one of the more hot-button issues, in recruiting, because USC's been the alpha male out west for the last 10, 12 years. And when they're falling apart on the field, that's kind of hurting their recruiting efforts.
A couple of really big, impressive early season wins by Washington and UCLA seems to sort of have had an uptick in their recruiting. I mean, are the two related?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because both those programs, especially Washington, they're in year 5 of Steve Sarkisian's reign. His first year he turned it around quick, went from 0 wins to 5 wins. Then he had 3 straight 7-win seasons. So there was questions. Is he ready to make that next step? Well, he starts the season off 3-0 with an impressive win against Boise State at home to open up Husky Stadium. Then a road win against Illinois that really helped. Well, one of the guys that was at that Boise State game was Demario Richard, who had been favoring Arizona State, but he came up on his own dime for an unofficial visit, was wowed by the experience and the atmosphere at Husky Stadium. So now the Huskies have pulled dead even with Arizona State. He did take an unofficial visit to Arizona State, or he was planning to take an unofficial to Arizona State over the weekend, but Washington has definitely put themselves in the mix for him heavily. Speaking of mix, Joe Mixon, who's the #1 running back on the West Coast, a 5-star running back and a top 5 back nationally, had a top 5 that included Florida, but he didn't take his official visit to Florida like he had planned to. They wanted to push him back to later in the season. He said if he didn't get to take the visit last weekend, then he wasn't going to visit Florida, and he kind of reshuffled the deck with his top 5. Well, UCLA, who had been recruiting him and had been one of his favorites, had fallen off the top 10 and didn't make it to the top 5. They're now back in the mix for him. 2 coaches that were recruiting him, Angus McClure, who recruits Northern California, and Steve Broussard, the running backs coach, were at a game of his last Friday. He was hoping to get down for the New Mexico State game. That didn't pan out, but he's planning to take an unofficial and an official down to UCLA at some point, and UCLA would love to try to bring him into the mix and really bolster their backfield. And Joe Mixon, like I said, he's the best back on the West Coast, and I think any school would like him, but UCLA has definitely put themselves back in the play for him. Cal, though, the hometown school, is still the school that I've been predicting that he's been going to go to for months, and if there's anything that's going to hurt them, it's that they're throwing the ball so much. But Joe Mixon is definitely the target of Cal, of UCLA, of Oregon, of Washington, Wisconsin, where he's also going to visit, and Oklahoma, where he's also going to visit. So everybody wants him, but when you're the best running back, everybody does want you. And I think that UCLA is definitely trying to put themselves back in the mix. Washington is still trying with him as well. And I think both of those schools have shown that they're running the ball a lot, they're winning, and that's why they're definitely contenders to get back in the race for him.
All right, thanks, Brandon. And there's more recruiting news at Scout.com.